Hello, hello. Welcome back to Peak Northwest, an outdoors and travel podcast by the Oregonian and OregonLive, dedicated to the adventure and exploration of our beautiful Pacific Northwest. I'm Jamie Hale.
And I'm Vicki Connor. Together, we take you to some of the most beautiful and interesting destinations in our region, discussing where to go, what to do, and places to see. And today, we are hunting for Bigfoot.
That's right. You know, searching for Sasquatch is a time-honored tradition here in the Pacific Northwest, where our natural environment is apparently ripe for creeping cryptids. Vicki, this is not something I've personally ever felt so compelled to do, hunting for Bigfoot. Is this something that you're ever curious about checking out?
These are some of the thoughts that I try to keep out of my mind when I'm hiking, actually. I try to think about Bigfoot as little as possible, so I can't say that is the case for me.
There's enough out there. We already got bears, we already got snakes, and, you know, those birds that attack you sometimes. We don't need Bigfoots out there, but maybe, I don't know, maybe they're all peaceful. I don't know anything about the Bigfoots personally, but we do happen to have someone on staff who knows a little bit or a lot of bit more about Bigfoot than we do, at least, who's coming on today to tell us all about her recent experiences hunting for Bigfoot. Coming back in the show, of course, is our good friend Sam Swindler. Sam, thanks for being willing to come back on here.
I'm always happy to talk about Bigfoots.
So, Sam, you are or you are not like a Bigfoot hunter. Would you identify that way?
I would not identify myself as a Bigfoot hunter. I have, perhaps I have joined a hunt for a Bigfoot, but I haven't found one yet. So.
And this was recently, was it not?
Yes. Teresa Mahoney and I, who's another staffer here, recently joined a trip with a group of guys who call themselves the Pacific Northwest Bigfoot Search. And they have been looking for Bigfoot for the last 4 years. And we went to the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. Am I saying it correctly? In Washington. Which is apparently a hotbed of Bigfoot sightings.
Sam, how did you even get started with this group?
I'm fascinated by the idea of Bigfoot. I think it is such an interesting cross-cultural phenomenon that has a particular resonance in the Pacific Northwest. And so I was kind of just like Googling different Bigfoot hunters in this area to see if I could convince someone to let me go with them. And these guys were the first ones who would let me join them on their hunt. These are just some dudes. They're not, actually, I don't know who would be a professional Bigfoot hunter. I don't know like what that would even entail as a credential, but they're not professional Bigfoot hunters. But they had an experience out in the woods 4 years ago that really spooked them, and they've been trying to figure out what that was since.
What was their experience?
So, June 17th, 2020. There are these guys, these are like outdoorsman dudes. These are like former military, not prone to telling tall tales, very experienced in the woods type dudes. They're camping in this place in a very remote area in the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. This is not like a campsite. This is like down what used to be a logging road. The road is a loose term here, like way out in the boonies. And they're camping and they hear, they're woken up at night by this like creepy, guttural, rattly howl sound, like a brat-a-tat-tat, like deep kind of growl. And they hear two of these. They feel something walking through their campsite. They're on like a thick campsite with like, it's like a pine bed. And so it doesn't really leave tracks, but they could feel that there was something there. get out. They don't hear anything, but it sounded to them like two things, and it sounded like an elevated sound, like it was not low to the ground sound. And it happened 2 nights in a row. And then after the second night, they were like, "We're sleeping in the car, and then we're leaving." So, and I will admit that I don't know nothing about the woods, but these guys are like, it wasn't a bear, because they had left some food out of their campsite, which we're not supposed to do, and it was all untouched. A bear would have been going toward that. They didn't think it was an elk either, because when they got out of the tent and, yelled at it, an elk or a bear will make just crash away and make noise. They're not like sneaky in that way, but this thing was like sort of sneaky and left. And so anyway, it was an experience that kind of really freaked them out, and they've been tracking that ever since.
I feel like you have to be
Wow.
kind of a special person to be freaked out and then try to continue to look for the thing that freaked you out. Like, most people get freaked out, probably go the other way, the other direction, try to forget about it. What are they like in person?
They're just like outdoors dudes. Like, I feel like they could have been cast out of like Yellowstone, from Montana. There's a couple in this group, and the Bigfoot hunting group has sort of expanded from the original 2 who were on this camping trip to probably 4 who are regulars in this. So they don't seem like the type of people who would be making up stories just to be making up stories to me. So the other thing that I think is really interesting is they said it kind of like brought back magic to them in a way. I think if you're a grown man in the modern age and you don't have a lot of sense of wonder, I think it sort of dies out as you get older. And so they did talk a lot about how it kind of made going camping exciting again, and it kind of brought this sort of magic and wonder of the unknown and what's out there and the mysteries of the universe back into their lives. And so I think that's actually part of it. And then I also think part of it is just, it's a way for these friends to hang out and be together and enjoy nature and have like quality male bonding time. So that's part of it. And then there's also this other element that actually doesn't really have anything to do with Bigfoot. But it turns out after they started the Pacific Northwest Bigfoot search and they created a website and they had some social media about it, and they would tell people like, "Oh, we're, looking in this area. We, found these tracks or whatever." Someone who reached out and said, "Well, while you're in that area, keep an eye out because there's people who've gone missing in this part of the woods and they've never been found. And so if you see, keep an eye out for like scraps of clothing or things that seem like they're from a missing person." And so the Bigfoot hunting has kind of spiraled into a missing persons search where they will also, so they're looking for both Bigfoot and people who've gone into the woods and never come back.
Wow. Presumably not people who have been taken by Bigfoot, or what's the theory there?
I don't think the connection is that Bigfoot nabbed these people.
Okay.
But I do think the crossover is that nature is so wild and so scary for me. And and just like you don't know what's out there. Anything or anyone could be out there and lost and you don't know. And so these are really, really like wild, remote places. I think that's the connecting factor. Wow. Places where you might get lost as a hiker or a hunter, and places where you might see Bigfoot, the overlap there, it's like that Venn diagram is a circle, my friend.
And so you went out with these guys, is that right?
I know, isn't that crazy? They were really nice guys, but it was like, yeah, I'm just going to go out into the woods, like 2 hours into like a dirt trail, basically, taken the newsroom Jeep, drove it through a creek, no cell phone service, with these like military dudes who are totally armed up because, you know, God knows what's out there, bears or Bigfoot. But they were really nice.
So as you're joining them, is this something that was, you know, you reached out and they don't normally bring people on with them, do they? Or how does that work?
Correct. Okay. They made a special exception as a news reporter to allow me to join one of their hunts.
And then my next question is, are they specifically just trying to get a glimpse of Bigfoot? How do they operate this plan? Or are they armed trying to like find, trap Bigfoot?
Well, I think they kind of go about it like a grid search, you know? So like they have, in this area that we were at, this was an area known as like Forlorn Lakes, I think, but it was like, that was where the campsite is. This was God knows how many miles from that. There were 3 people who've gone missing in that area in the last, I don't know, 20 years and have never been found. And so they have a description of what these people were last seen wearing and kind of roughly where they might have been. And then they also have, like in tandem to that, they also have a map of Bigfoot sightings and things that people have seen. And then they just sort of like go out in the woods and see what they can see. And in this trip, we were trying to get to a place known as Skookum Meadows, which Skookum, I think I'm pronouncing it close, is a Chinook jargon word, which means, depending on the context, either powerful or monstrous. And so there have been sightings of Bigfoot, Sasquatch-like things in that area for a very, very long time. And we tried to make it up to that area, and this was in June, but it was snowed, and this wasn't like a road, you guys. So this was just a trail. It might have been like a logging road 40 years ago. And we couldn't get past the snow to get quite up that high. But like, I don't know if there's a Bigfoot, but if there was a Bigfoot, like that would be the place for there to be a Bigfoot.
It seems like pretty good Bigfoot territory. So for like geographical context, we're talking about Skookum Meadows is like right halfway between Mount St. Helens and Mount Adams. So this is kind of like, you know, it's out there. Also
out there,
a very beautiful area, I imagine. I don't know. Did you get some mountain views at least? What was it like out there?
Oh yeah. I mean, that was hardcore nature. There was like a waterfall out there. There were all these, it was spooky nature. There was this really creepy forest with all these like moss, like this swaying moss hanging from these trees, like beards. It definitely looked like a horror movie. In like a beautiful, creepy, haunting way. I'm sure other people would maybe not think it's creepy. I find nature to be fairly creepy, I guess. Because I just look at this and I'm like, wow, look how big an expanse this is and how many ways I could die here. Just this cliff, these roads, this waterfall thing. I mean, you know, we saw elk like from a distance. Those things are horrifying and huge. The guy kept saying like, you know, oh, you know, I hope we see a bear. I'm like, I don't need to see a bear. Why would we want to see a bear? Just real spooky. And there's nobody else there. There's nobody else. Like it was just us. No cell service. Like it was spooky.
Just you and these 2 dudes who are armed to the teeth.
Yeah, right? Yeah. What could go wrong?
Yeah. Were you like preparing yourself to see a Bigfoot? Or were you like, nah, this is not going to happen. I don't believe in it. Like, I guess I'm wondering, like, how much do you believe in Bigfoot? And then how much in that moment when you were out there did you believe in Bigfoot?
I try not to overthink anything that I go into as a reporter. And you know what? The last time I think I talked to you guys, it was about ghosts, right?
Yeah.
And I also, so, you know, realistically, I don't believe in ghosts, but I'm open to it if it presents itself. And I think I feel the same way about Bigfoot. I think realistically, I just don't see how there could be a mammal that size that we haven't discovered in some way tangible evidence of. But also, world's big. I don't know. I don't know anything about anything that lives in the woods. So who's to say there's not like a Bigfoot out? Sure, why not? There's all kinds of horrifying stuff out there. Could be.
Sam, was there, a specific start time? What were the methods used? Were they looking for tracks? Like, how did this work?
I think, well, first off, I don't think they did like their hardcore searching because I was there and Teresa was there and we were both like carrying camera equipment and stuff. And I'm not exactly like, an outdoorsy type person going that far out into the woods wherever they would have normally gone. But while we were there, they did put up some trail cams in some areas because I think they're trying to catch something on a camera. And then they're really just sort of exploring new territory. And they were using this app called, I think, On X. Have you guys heard of this? It's an app that you can use to like, I don't know. I guess they were like marking where they put the cameras and they were marking spots where they found new trails or game trails, and kind of just sort of exploring this wilderness as like, I don't know, Lewis and Clark style kind of, and just sort of mapping areas that they've been in. You're probably going to ask if I saw a Bigfoot or heard a Bigfoot, and I would say that I don't think I did. Although that night we did camp. Teresa and I struggled greatly to put this little tent together, but we finally figured it out. Worst sleep of my life. And I think we both heard at night like a thump, thump, and neither one of us wanted to get out and look at that.
Yeah.
Forgive my like lack of investigative journalism, but I was not going to get out of the tent. It was cold. It was raining. I would say tents are like not waterproof. They're like water resistant, probably. It was horrible. And so no, I wasn't going to go try to figure out what made a thump sound outside of our tent at like 4 a.m. But we both heard it once. And like, in fact, I didn't say anything that night and neither did she. And then the next morning we both woke up and she's like, did you hear something? And I was like, yeah, but I didn't want to check it out because it was cold and wet and scary.
I feel that. I feel like if whenever I'm camping, if I hear sounds outside the tent, which I do almost every time I camp, there's like a skunk or a raccoon or, a bear or whatever out there, I'm not going to get up to go investigate it.
Oh. Ain't nothing good gonna come from that, Jamie.
No. And also that's like, you gotta wake up, put on some clothes, put on your shoes, like it's not worth it. I think to just, sate that curiosity. Like there's stuff out there and it's fine. I don't know. That's maybe kind of how I feel about Bigfoot too. Like if Bigfoot's out there, that's fine. I don't need to go see it. I don't need to go find it. But I'm fascinated by people who really do feel the urge and the need or just the desire to go out there and look for that stuff. So, I mean, were these guys, at this point now they've been hunting for Bigfoot, I presume for a little while. Are they disappointed to have not found anything? Are they just in it for, like you said, the experience of being out there together, the discovery of wonder? How are they feeling about their efforts thus far?
I mean, I do think part of it is the journey, right? I think if you already enjoy camping and hiking and kind of exploring these areas that people don't really go into, if you already are having fun doing that, to add that little twist of a mystery and almost like a treasure hunt, I think that just heightens the experience even more. And to have these kind of two things, right? Like this the Bigfoot side of it is, a little goofy, but why not? And then the missing person side of it is like, well, we're already here. We could possibly help somebody. I mean, it's looking for a needle in the world's largest haystack, but still, it's just something else to add another level, I think, to your outdoors experience. And I do think, like, if anybody's going out there and looking for stuff, if you knew who went missing in that area and you just sort of had that filed in the back of your mind, because I've gone deep in the weeds on this, I have been reading a lot about missing persons cases, and particularly people who go missing in wilderness areas. And a lot of times there's no trace of someone. But a lot of times if something is found, if it's like a partial remain or clothing or something, it's just from some random person who was hiking or recreating in that area and comes across something and reports it. So I don't know. That whole thing is really interesting to me.
So Sam, do you feel like you came away with any tips for people? So like, say we've got someone listening who's like, I am into this Bigfoot and or missing persons in the woods searching experience. Where do you direct them? What do you say to those folks?
So if you want to know if there have been people who've gone missing in the area where you're camping, the Pacific Northwest Bigfoot Search has sort of spun off and created the Pacific Northwest Missing Persons Project. And they actually have created a map where it kind of lists where people were last seen. And they also have a podcast where they just sort of go over old cases and just basically just tell you the facts. This is where they were, this is where they're last seen, this is what they were wearing, this is what they might have been doing. I guess it's just kind of like keep your eyes peeled if you see something that looks like it doesn't need to be there. As far as Bigfooting, squatching, if you will.
Yes.
I think that people look for tracks. I think people try to call them in a way. There's a thing called knocking, and you'll see this in like Bigfoot hunting videos and groups. There's a belief that Bigfoots communicate with each other through these howls and grunts, and through like knocking on trees. And so you might see people who take like a big tree branch and like thump it against a tree to see if like a Bigfoot is nearby. It will respond and communicate with you with a thud back. Otherwise, I think they're pretty, they kind of keep to themselves. So they do seem to be hard to call. If you look at Washington State, I think has the most reported Bigfoot sightings of any state in the country, and then I think Oregon's number 2. But if you look at a map of places where there have been Bigfoot sightings, and then if you also looked at a map at places where there are black bears, they kind of overlap a little bit. So if I had a theory, and I don't know nothing about bears, but I bet sometimes bears act weird. And they stand up and they do things that are unusual. And so maybe there's something there. So if you want to see a Bigfoot, maybe go to a place where there are bears.
Wow. This take of Bigfoot is actually just bears.
That's my hot take, right? Bigfoot's bears.
Bigfoot's bears. Yeah. No, that
and they both sound terrible and scary. So
what's interesting to me about the whole like Bigfoot's communicating to one another, I'm used to singular Bigfoot. Like in my mind, it's a magical creature with lore that never ages and it's just one. But to think that there are multiple big I want to say big feet
Vicky
Bigfoots out there.
Vicky, the idea that Bigfoot is a magical being that lives forever is ridiculous. That's ridiculous. That's crazy talk. Now, real Bigfooters will tell you it is a species.
Mm-hmm.
So the belief is that it is a yet to be discovered ape species that broke off from humans early in the evolutionary chain and still exists in very, very small numbers. And so they're, female Bigfoots and male Bigfoots and baby Bigfoots and
Baby Bigfoot.
baby. Somewhere there's a baby Bigfoot.
I think that's like the premise of that movie Sasquatch Sunset that came
It's
out.
totally, yes, it is exactly it. That's the thinking.
Okay. Boy.
But they're all, it's so interesting because I've gone deep down the Bigfoot hole. There is also some theories that Bigfoot can travel interdimensionally.
Oh.
And so that's how they get around kind of undetected. But there are kind of two schools of thought on that. There's some people in the Bigfoot community who really think that could be a possibility. And there's other people who are like, that's ridiculous. And that hurts the real science. So there's all kinds of fringe beliefs on it. I just find like the belief system of that fascinating. I think like the cultural element of that is really fascinating. Like, and the fact that there are stories for these hairy creatures who, live in the woods from all kinds of cultures, even outside of places where they have black bears. I think that's a really interesting phenomenon. But in my mind, I think that is more of like cultural anthropology interesting and not so much biology interesting. But hey, I'm a live and let live kind of person. So as far as like conspiracy theories you could believe in, I feel like this one's fairly harmless. And I have talked to a lot of people who look for Bigfoot, and they are very nice, normal people. So I am not one to judge this belief.
Absolutely. So every Bigfooter I've ever met has been lovely, perfectly lovely, and very enthused about this. Which again, harming no one. That's great. Go off. Sam, do you feel like, so you said you're deep in the Bigfoot hole right now? Are you gonna like stay there for a little while and kick it around a little bit? Or are you like parachuting into this for this story and then you're gonna come back into like non-Bigfoot life? Like I guess I'm wondering, are you going to go back out into the woods at some point and try this again, or no?
I think my love and appreciation for Bigfoot does not outweigh my dislike of the woods. So I don't like camping, and I would say I still don't like camping. The only thing that would get me to go camping is Bigfoot. And I did it. But I don't quite, it's just not really my vibe. So it was cold. It was wet. It was uncomfortable. I had to pee in the woods. I did not enjoy that experience. So I probably won't be doing that again.
Gotcha.
Well, kudos for you for getting out there, Sam. And it really speaks to the dedication you have as a reporter.
Yeah, no, it's a really great story. I'm working on a story about the Pacific Northwest Bigfoot search, and kind of the guys behind it and all of their stories. And the guys who do this are actually far more interesting than I think Bigfoot is. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on and telling us all about it, Sam. Always fun to have you on and hear about some magical creature, some crazy adventure in the middle of nowhere. I feel like you're always getting up to something fun and interesting, and often a little strange, I guess. And love to have your take on camping here. We talk to people who love camping so much. It's great to have someone who doesn't, honestly, because not everyone does.
Yeah, I don't get it. I honest to God don't get it. Like, it's so much work and effort to be that uncomfortable outside. There's a reason like we as humans have built shelters and like permanent shelters and like stayed in them. And then like, you have to spend all this money for this special stuff to sleep outside, like I had to go to the Goodwill and buy hiking pants. I mean, it was just like a whole thing. I had to borrow a bunch of stuff. And I was still like miserable and cold and like everything's so damp, like just all over. It was just awful.
Yeah. Well, you did it for journalism.
Yep. I did it one time. So that was the first time I'd gone camping since I think I was a Girl Scout when I was maybe 9 or 10. So
Gosh, well, thanks for taking one for the team, and thanks for coming on to tell us all about it.
Yeah, happy to. Let me know if you see any Bigfoots when you're out there.
Will do. Well, Vicky, what do you think? Is your interest peaked into Bigfoot or not?
I would say that I come away from this podcast being intrigued and maybe just a little bit more cultured on our Pacific Northwest culture of Bigfoot. Um, I will continue to try to not think about Bigfoot. That's just me. How about you?
Yeah, I think I'm big same there. I don't have a special um interest in Bigfoot, I guess. If it's out there, if they're out there, if the feet are out there somewhere in the woods, good for them. I would say I do like the idea of Bigfoot as like a interdimensional spiritual being as opposed to like a biological creature. That like works for me more in my brain. Um, so I don't know. There's all kinds of like, I mean, like Sam said, there's all kinds of spooky stuff out there. I just try not to worry too much about it. If there's a weird sound outside my tent, I just go, nope, and go back to sleep. And that's the way you do it. You just don't, think too much about it. So I don't know. I'm not going to let the Bigfoot lie,
I will say baby Bigfoot seems a bit more approachable, but like maybe it's the same thing as bears, where there's a baby, there's like an angry mother around. So, but I would like to see a baby Bigfoot.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. I mean, come on. The little tuft of fur, its little funny face.
Still huge feet.
Still huge feet. Oh, gosh. Well, folks, that will do it for us for today. Until next time, you can watch our videos on the Oregonian's YouTube channel and view all of our travel and outdoors coverage on OregonLive.com/travel, as well as hereisoregon.com.
Please leave us a rating or review if you enjoy the show. And if you want to support this podcast as well as our local journalism, please consider a subscription to Oregon Live. You can find details at OregonLive.com/pod support. Also, if you're a fan of the show and you're interested in potentially sponsoring it, you can get in touch with our marketing people at advertise@Oregonian.com. This episode of the show is produced by me, Becky Connor, alongside Jamie Hale.
Stay safe and happy travels, everyone. Until next time, we leave you with this 10 seconds of Zen.